Hello, Bat fans. I am Anthony Mango, welcoming you to the first chapter of The Batman, a Nighttime Story, 100 Records from the Wayne Foundation Archives, which is my epic Batman story that is being told through 100 sections as part of my Blueprint project, where I take the greatest superhero from DC Comics and I try to boil down his full history in as small of a package as I possibly can. Now, in the previous video, I explained in general terms what the Blueprint project is all about. So if you have not checked that out, go back and listen to that for the explanation of how this is all going to work. But today, I'm going to be presenting to you a general synopsis of what the first section of this gargantuan journey of Bruce Wayne is all about. Now, obviously, this is a Batman story, but it is more so than anything a Bruce Wayne story. The details of this can change in future adaptations, just to be aware that, this is not written out in full script form quite yet, so there could be changes for dialogue and scenes and sets, and obviously in more detail as well. But when it comes to these videos, at least on YouTube, what we are going to be doing here is I'm going to be presenting to you a reading of what the overall narrative is for these particular parts of the story. So naturally, when it comes to this, we have to start with Volume 1, Chapter 1. And if you remember with the previous video, Volume 1 is entitled Gotham Guardian, and Chapter 1, which I'm presenting to you today, is Why Do We Fall? So the reason that this is subtitled 100 Records from the Wayne Foundation Archives is because the entire story is being narrated by, well, I have a very specific location and setting and purpose for what he is doing, but the entire story is being narrated by a form of Bruce Wayne. And I will explain the characterization of that in the future, but I don't want to reveal it quite yet. So keep in mind that I will be explaining this through the mind of the narrator in my form, not narrator Bruce Wayne, although he will pop up here and there. So the first thing that we start off with for this entire project is narrator Bruce Wayne.
A good death is hard to come by. Some cultures say that at the end of your life you walk toward the light. An unknown for me. How do your eyes adjust when you've spent your whole life living in the shadows? And what if you stumble when you walk? All these storytellers who create the myths and legends of a shining beacon that is the afterlife rarely ever know just how dark things can really get. How the deeper you go into a bottomless pit, the easier it is to lose sight of which direction you're falling. Some of us don't have the pleasure of perpetual comfort in the embrace of tomorrow's sunrise. No warm glow when our eyes open in the morning. Because when I looked into the abyss and it stared back at me, it blinked, and I decided to make it my home.
So the Waynes are having a small gathering with some of their friends and their colleagues and important business associates, including the Elliots, the Sionis family, the St. Clouds, Mayor Aubrey James, etc. And Bruce is playing on the Wayne Estate's grounds with his friends Silver St. Cloud and Tommy Elliot, who is named after Thomas Wayne because their families are close, and Thomas Wayne is very much a character that everybody looks up to, whether you are his contemporary or you're somebody who, is brand new to the Gotham scene. You very quickly look up to Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne as well. So Tommy Elliot, named directly after Thomas Wayne. And these kids are, they don't want to be around all the boring adults and everything. Instead, they're looking for some ancient relics because you can find that stuff on the Wayne grounds. These Waynes have been here for centuries. And one of the things that they are looking for today are arrowheads. And during the process of this, they stumble across something through one of the more, I guess you could say, beaten up areas of the Wayne grounds that doesn't get really applied to as much. The groundskeepers aren't focusing as much in that area. And in the process for this, Bruce falls down this little shaft, and it's a well structure. This crumbles underneath him and opens up a small cavern completely filled with bats, scaring him almost to complete shock. Thomas and his colleague, Dr. Leslie Tompkins, who is actually Bruce's godmother, she and he treat Bruce's wounds, and Tommy's parents blame the incident on Tommy. Bruce tries to take responsibility of this, but they don't want to hear it. It's clearly Tommy's fault. Tommy is just a loser, and he shouldn't be messing around with the Wayne boy and ruining their reputation because they look so far up to Thomas. They don't want anything to ruin that kind of a connection. Roman Sionis, who was off on his own and didn't want to play with them, he doesn't quite fit with the rest of them. He scoffs at the idea, and he just tells Tommy that, you shouldn't take that from your parents. It's kind of bullshit. Tommy says that, he looks up to Thomas Wayne as well. To a certain extent, he's gotten this drilled into his brain from the moment he's been born. So, one day he's going to be a doctor like Thomas, and he's going to prove that he's better than Thomas Wayne, better than his parents and everything like that. Tommy's parents always speak highly of Thomas Wayne, and they idolize him, so that sticks in his mind quite a bit. He's never going to live up to that, and by proxy, he's never going to live up to Bruce Wayne, the son of Thomas Wayne. So the adults go back to talking their business about some of the important things going on right now, and we find out that this isn't entirely a social event. Although there's always been tension between the Wayne family and, let's call them the Mafia, things are getting worse. Now that we have lots of different characters in this range, but we're only going to focus on some right now. One of them being that the Lion, a nickname for Rex Calabrese, has been usurped by Carmine Falcone, who has also just killed a lot of its primary competition. We have Carl Grissom is out of the mix, and Antoine Rotelli is no longer a part of the Mafia scene. Falcone is very quickly moving up the hierarchy. Now more than ever, they are feeling pressure to bend to the will of the Mafia, and Falcone is even more vicious and calculating compared to some of his predecessors. But they still won't stand down, and they know what is right. The Mafia is not what Gotham needs. Somebody has to fight for Gotham, and if they don't, it's going to go further down the drain. So among the chatter about this mysterious Illuminati controlling everything that is a part of the Mafia mix, and that's kind of written off as nonsense. It's just tinfoil hat conspiracy BS. People joke that the legendary Court of Owls nursery rhyme is true, and that the Talon is going to get them if they keep talking about the Mafia and everything. A lot of people don't believe in it. A lot of people start going, I heard some stories here and there. Thomas and Martha try to stress that they're the rich and influential. Influence comes with it a certain level of responsibility, and it is up to them to make a difference. So Bruce, now that he is circling around the adults a little more, asks what they're talking about and why they seem so concerned, but Martha just reassures him there's nothing to be afraid of. Bruce shouldn't be afraid of what happened to him earlier. He shouldn't be afraid of this. And he's a little bit shaken up from this whole incident of falling into the cavern and the bats attacking him and everything along those lines. So she just wants to essentially tell him, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. And she tells him something that's going to stick with him throughout his whole life and what this chapter is named after. Why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves up. For the next few days, Bruce is still shaken up by the incident and just jittery in general. And Alfred, I guess we should refer to him more so as Alfred Pennyworth, their butler, their trusted confidant, and essentially Bruce's best friend in a lot of different ways, which is a little sad and a little comforting as well. It's nice to see a little boy can just take to some of his people who are the help in a lot of different ways. But there's a connection there that extends far beyond that. It's not quite the same as being best friends with the cook or something along those lines. So Alfred is always a sense of comfort, and he sits with him and cheers him up a little bit. But Bruce is still afraid, and when the lights go out at night in particular, even though he doesn't want to admit it, that's when things get really bad. Now, in his narration, he explains that he didn't sleep at all, and that whole night he worried about something is going to fly in through his window, these bats are going to come, they're going to take him away. This whole Wayne estate is just surrounded with these mysteries and these old, you could call them dark presences, but it's more so just the intimidation that children have when they're around like antiques and the weight of history. And Bruce feels that all the time. He is constantly feeling the pressure of being a part of the Wayne legacy. Now, you factor on top of that, at any moment he could be walking outside and he can crumble down into a cavern and bats can attack him. Suddenly he doesn't feel safe no matter where he is. So, especially when it comes to children in the night and the dark forces that might be in the dark when you don't have a nightlight on or anything, Bruce is feeling like he could be attacked at any moment. So we are on June 26th right now. This is a calendar date that he is going to forever hate for the rest of his life. Bruce, Thomas, and Martha decide that they're going to go out and see a show, just to have some fun. And hey, look, they're the ritzy people. They're going to do things like that quite a bit. But also, in particular, they want to cheer Bruce up. And entertainment is something that Bruce has always been into. He is a big fan of movies. He loves Zorro in particular. He is the type of kid that would dress up like Zorro and get a stick in the yard and start using that as a sword and everything. But the only thing that's playing right now in the movies is Footlight Frenzy, and nobody wants to go see that movie. So instead, they decide that they're going to go to the opera, because plays are like sophisticated movies. Typical rich people mentality, right? So they go to see The Grey Ghost at the Monarch Theater. But in the process of watching this rather boring opera that normally nobody would be all that interested in unless it's just for status purposes, Bruce starts to get a little fidgety. And Thomas notices that the reason why is because there is a scene where there's a bunch of trapeze artists and they're dangling from these ropes and everything, but they are dressed somewhat like bats. And that is especially triggering for Bruce. Is the worst possible thing that you could have taken him to in this set of circumstances. So since Thomas notices that Bruce is clearly uncomfortable, he decides, hey, this has been enough opera for today, and they decide that they are going to leave a little bit early. They exit the theater and they walk down Park Row near the alley at Pearl and Phillips Streets. And a common homeless man that we'll find out is named Joseph Chilton, his street name is Joe Chill, approaches them and he asks for the time. So Thomas checks his watch, 10:47 p.m., and Martha prepares her purse to give him some money because he's clearly down and out of his luck and he could use some and they have plenty to spare. And in this distraction, Joe pulls out a gun and he points it at Thomas. And they immediately want to oblige. Thomas very carefully pulls out his wallet, hands it to him, tells him, hey, stay calm, chill out. It's okay. It's okay. Chill takes Thomas's wallet. Chill goes for Martha's purse. And while it seems like this is going to be over and it's scary enough as it is, that's not enough. He wants the jewelry too. So Chill goes to grab Martha's pearl necklace, and Thomas, instinctively thinking that his wife is in some kind of physical danger, because now this guy's reaching out to them. He is not just taking their money. He is putting his hands on his wife. He separates the two and a scuffle starts, and it feels like an eternity, but it's probably only about 2 seconds. In the process of it, Chill already has the upper hand and he decides to take it. He fires his gun and he shoots Thomas. And Martha immediately shrieks, which makes Joe even more nervous. And when you're nervous, you make mistakes. And what Chill decides to do at that moment is he needs to prioritize that if she runs, he's in trouble. So he turns the gun and he shoots Martha. Now, at this point, Bruce is paralyzed with fear. In the blink of an eye, this all just happened, and 2 seconds ago, they were just walking away from the Monarch Theater. It's right behind them. And now to his right and to his left are his parents bleeding out. And at the same time, Joe Chill is panicking because just a second ago, these people weren't in the alley. And now he's just shot 2 people. And there's a little kid standing in front of him. What does he do? This little kid is looking right at him. But instead of shooting him, now that 1 or 2 extra seconds has passed by, Chill is able to actually get a clearer head, and he decides to run off. Now, it's unknown whether this was because he didn't want to kill a kid, or that he was worried that the cops were going to be showing up and he just needed to run off and get out of there as quickly as possible. Nevertheless, he runs off, and Bruce nervously surveys the situation, still not believing what's just happened. I mean, the pearls are strewn all over the ground, along with Martha's lifeless body, and Thomas is clinging onto his life, reaching out for Bruce. But before they can embrace, Thomas dies. And when the police arrive on the scene, Bruce is on his knees next to them, frozen, in total shock. Several cops stand around talking to each other about the crime scene, and nobody wants to go to talk to Bruce, because it's not exactly the thing you sign up for when you become a cop, is to talk to the kid that's standing in front of his dead parents. And some are just too shy, and some just don't care. But there is one, James Gordon, a relative rookie to the GCPD after having gone through a couple tours in the military, and he is a different breed than what the other people are on the force. He takes it upon himself to try to console Bruce about as best as he can, but Bruce is just staring in utter silence, just not there. Now, Bruce is soaked from the rain because, of course, it's raining, the mood. And Gordon puts his coat around him, and only then does Bruce start to shiver and open up, breaking his silence in his statuesque form. Gordon moves him away from his parents, trying to, hand on the back, saying, "You don't need to see this." And Bruce immediately starts dishing all the details that he can possibly think of about the scene of the crime, what Chill looked like, the time from the watch, beat by beat what happened here. And he is taking all this in. And Bruce always has had a good memory. He's always been a smart kid, so if he were to hear some information, he's going to retain that information, and he's got a kind of a photographic memory as it is. So all these details are insanely vivid. Most people, when they go through a crisis, they think of things as kind of foggy and hazy, and it all happened in a blur. In Bruce's mind, this is about as 4K as you can possibly get. This is intense. So he wants to tell as much information as he possibly can. Who's going to write down these notes? Who's going to go after this guy? What else do they need to know? Do they need to know what color outfit he was wearing? Was there anybody else in the street? Bruce knows as much as he could possibly know about this whole situation, without even rationalizing that he is essentially helping with a criminal investigation for the first time in his life. So Bruce is going a mile a minute, and he is talking so fast that people can't even write down this information. Not that a lot of the GCPD actually cares, because they are really bad at their job, but still, Bruce is telling them more information than they really need to know, and more information than they can possibly record. So as he's talking, as fast as he's talking, Gordon just tells him, "Look, slow down. Are you okay?" And that's when Bruce says, "He killed us." And he starts to hyperventilate, and his hand goes to his chest, and he's trying to breathe. He's just clutching his heart, and he doesn't know what's going on. He's realizing now that he is taking in even more information about his environment, and he is darting his eyes back and forth, and he's hyperventilating, and he can't breathe, and what is going on, and what's happening, and who am I talking to right now, and everything that goes along that. So Gordon thinks that maybe Bruce got hit. Maybe he is actually clutching his chest because there's some shrapnel there, or he is hurt in some fashion and nobody's paid attention to this poor kid. So he tries to move Bruce's hand out of the way so he could check for a wound. And this is when Bruce holds Gordon's hand. and squeezes it. This is the comfort that he needs right now to ground himself that this is reality, and he's not just floating in this ether of despair that he feels. Gordon says, "It's okay, Bruce. I'm here. I got you." Those are words that Gordon is going to prove to be true for the rest of their lives. Now, this is where narrator Bruce comes in, and he says, it might be a little melodramatic, but his childhood ended that night, and he died his first spiritual death, of which he would unfortunately suffer a few more throughout his life. Looking back, Bruce isn't sure what would have become of him if Gordon hadn't been the one that talked to him that night, but he's sure that things would have gotten a lot worse. So Alfred at this point has arrived. Your perception of time is off when it comes to these events, and another wave of realization crashes over Bruce. It occurs to him that Alfred is all that he has left, and his parents aren't coming, ever. This is the most family that Bruce is ever going to have from this point forward. And Alfred's not going to be there forever either. Sooner or later, and for all he knows, maybe sooner, with the way that current events have just gone, Alfred's going to leave him too. And this is when Bruce breaks down, crying hysterically. For the first time, you see him as an actual kid. Bruce admits that this part of his memory is a little bit of a whirl. It's spotty at best, because this is when he just turned that part of his brain off that would be able to take in all the information. But obviously, Alfred and Gordon spoke, and at some point they split up. Gordon went off with the unit to go hunt down to try to find Joe Chill, while he and Alfred went to the police station to fill out some paperwork and answer some questions, of which he remembers nothing, because that wasn't the slightest bit comforting at all. All he remembers is how cold the police station was, and that he felt no comfort being surrounded by all these cops, until he saw Gordon walking in through the precinct with Joe Chill in custody. And he recounts that he had seen Alfred upset a few times beforehand to varying levels. Dropping something and staining an expensive rug is one thing, and Alfred's stern lectures about instilling the importance of tidiness could sometimes get a little bit like, "No, Master Rain, you have to put these away the right way," and everything along those lines. And there were a few times where he saw Alfred kick himself into gear, where there was a chance that somebody was trespassing on the grounds, when, the mansion is in danger in some fashion. Very rarely ever happen, despite the fact that, Gotham's a terrible place. Wayne Manor is very well fortified, and they had plenty of security along those grounds. Security that would have been really beneficial if they would have been accompanying them to this particular night. But this is the first time that he actually saw Alfred's edge, because the first thing that this otherwise kindly butler did when he saw Joe Chill being brought in was to walk over and punch him. Alfred's not much of a sucker punch kind of guy, though, so he does have some honor in him, and he remembers that Alfred requested that the cops take the handcuffs off Joe Chill, so that way, if he kills him, it's going to at least be a fair fight. Nevertheless, Alfred gets restrained by Gordon and by some other cops. It's going to take more than one guy at this point. And Chill gets taken away. He is booked. He is tossed into a holding cell. And Alfred is tending to his bloody knuckles while apologizing to Bruce for his outburst, because Master Wayne shouldn't have seen that. Commissioner McKeever is not fond of this little song and dance that's happening right now, but he's going to let it slide. All things considered, there's far worse that happens in this GCPD on a regular basis than what's going to go down in history as one of those stories that you tell people. The Wayne family butler punched out one of their people that they were arresting. It's kind of just one of those stories that you tell when you're gathering with your cop friends. So why did Chill kill Thomas and Martha Wayne? Well, the prevailing theory around the GCPD station is that According to some of their informants and the rumor mill chatter of the criminal underworld, Falcone had unofficially put out a hit on their heads, saying that he would pay handsomely for whoever would either get them to go along with his plans and essentially be in their pocket, or get them to get out of the way, is a nice way to put it. And Chill was probably the first guy to get lucky by just being there in Park Row at the same time. So maybe he thought that this would impress Falcone and he'd be able to go from this homeless bum to a respected member of the mafia, or whatever the case may be. But naturally, after being caught, Chill denies this, saying that he's heard of the chatter, but this wasn't a hit job. It was just a mugging gone wrong. Sure, pal. He's obviously just covering something up. Meanwhile, Falcone is just casually eating dinner when one of his goons informs him of the news. Thomas and Martha Wayne are dead. And officially, once this story gets out and he starts getting questioned about it, Falcone's going to go on to claim that he wants nothing to do with this Chill character. He doesn't even know who that guy is, and nothing can be traced back to him because he never put out a hit to begin with. You can't believe everything that you hear from disreputable sources like criminals, for God's sakes, and Falcone's not a criminal. Come on. So if he had a dime for every 2-bit thug that said that he works for Falcone in some fashion, he'd be an even richer man than he actually is. And he'd probably be a richer man than the Waynes at this point. Essentially, he's gotten what he wants, and there are no repercussions for this whatsoever. Typical fucking Gotham. Elsewhere, a few hours after the Waynes have been murdered, the night is fading, and it is very soon to be dawn. But despite the time, an emergency meeting is called at the Powers Hotel. Joseph and Maria Powers put on these creepy white masks, and they enter this conference room, and everyone there is wearing the same creepy white masks. This strange gathering of unknown people is the real, actual Court of Owls. And they have a lot to discuss, so they get right into it. The power dynamics in Gotham are about to shift forever. And while Bruce is going to be stuck reliving this terrible night in his mind for the rest of his life, for the rest of the citizens in Gotham, they're just looking forward to that comforting morning light that's just around the corner. But what they don't know is that this is actually the dawn of a nighttime story. So that is the general story of part 1, and if you're enjoying this, let me know by leaving a like on this video and by dropping a comment below and subscribing to this channel here on YouTube, and particularly by sharing this video and spreading the word. Now, please consider sharing this link on social media, posting on message boards, on Facebook, on Reddit, so on and so forth, and tweeting this out with the hashtags Batman Blueprint and also hashtag hire Mango DC Comics. Tweet at DC Comics, tweet at Batman, tweet at collaborators and storytellers and artists and other YouTube channels. Let's get this to have some steam behind it. And the more eyes that are on the Blueprint project, the more that I can present to you, and the more that we can turn this into something beyond just these videos. Because this is not intended to be the full scope of this. This is not just a YouTube story synopsis. This is meant to be much, much more. I'm just giving you a little bit of a taste. And if you would like to directly sponsor the continuation of this series, consider donating to the PayPal at the bottom of my website, Fanboys Anonymous, or subscribing to our Patreon, Fanboys Anonymous, over there, patreon.com/Fanboys Anonymous. And I hope that you enjoyed Volume 1, Chapter 1, Why Do We Fall? And I hope to see you back again for Chapter 2 of Gotham Guardian, entitled The Big Chill. Take care, hug your kids, and I'll see you next time. Same bat time, same bat channel.